In preparing for an eventual favorite films of 2015 video, I have really started to crack the whip recently in watching the movies of 2015. So about 75% of what I'm watching right now is from that year, and every movie that I'm going to talk about in this video is from that year. What I'm going to talk about today are a lot of films that are just kind of middle of the row, the ones that aren't going to be making the actual honorable mentions or list itself. But they're not bad enough that they're going to be in the worst of the year portion. So without any further ado, I present 2015's Most Mediocre. Starting with Max Landis's American Ultra, which takes itself too seriously, but I will concede that it's pretty creative and has some unique aspects to it. It's oddly romantic, sometimes sappy in a way I can't cite another film as having been. Landis is conscious of stereotypes, and this movie is refreshing in that way. Things like the fry pan bullet time bit are unique and make for a different movie. There's some halfway decent action here, and I can really see Jesse Eisenberg as a druggie, although maybe not a pothead. And I don't know if that's fully realized here, but it kind of works. Christian Stewart is a block of wood, an absolute drag to watch. Every character in this movie feels like a voice of Max Landis rather than an actual distinct individual. Coming back to the biggest issue with the flick, this movie doesn't know how to loosen up. It's a stoner turned Jason Bourne type flick and doesn't realize that that needs dick jokes. Sure, try and have a moment at some point, but this movie just goes for it. It tries to have a moment 5 or 8 times, and for the most part, they're eye rollers rather than heart squeezers. All in all, this evens out to a 5 out of 10 for me. The Danish Girl is mediocrity in a fancy package. The acting is fine, and the movie is unbearably pretty, but only to the point of insult given the material it's capturing. This is the kind of thing that gives Oscar-worthy movies a bad reputation, and it fails to enlighten or shock or really do anything beyond the bare minimum of what could have been expected from this project. For the decent shot composition and slight degree to which the movie explores Eddie Redmayne's inner turmoil, The Danish Girl also gets a 5 out of 10. The Intern was one of Tarantino's favorite movies of 2015, and that's okay. It's okay to indulge in this kind of thing every once in a while. If your mom is choosing tonight's movie, she could do worse. This flick grasps what it is and owns it with its brightly lit sets, idealistic views, and fluffy music. It exists in a world where every morning you step outside and yell good morning to your neighbor across the way to be met with a sincere smile and response.
How are you, Jim? Well, fine, thank you. Little Clark here just made the baseball team, so we're off to get snow cones to celebrate.
Well, isn't that just wonderful?
Yeah, isn't life just wonderful?
I don't think this world has need of mental institutions or door locks or pepper spray, and there's something appealing to that. It's easy to digest, but it's hard to have a real moment in a fantasy world like this. With all the big smiles and Pleasantville talk, it's hard to keep these eyes from rolling. And as far as feminism goes, this is not the way to go about it. Especially notice how Anne Hathaway's decisions are so influenced by the advice of men. I could overlook this if the movie didn't parade itself as some kind of role model in that regard. In the way of look and feel, The Intern is pretty solid. It looks very professional. They employ fluid camera movements. The focus is always crisp. While by the books, it's an okay looking movie. You wouldn't guess they're both Oscar winners, but Anne Hathaway and Robert De Niro are fine. Although I need to watch Goodfellas as soon as possible to make the world right again. Honestly, I think this thing had more potential than was realized, but for being a fluffy, feel-good movie, It turned out okay. 5 out of 10. Woody Allen. I mean, wow, respect. The guy has pretty much written and directed a movie every year since 1971, which would kill most people 5 years in. Although, that does make you wonder, is he just throwing everything he's got at us and hoping for something to stick every 5 years or so? Irrational Man is a movie that nobody has cared about since about a week after it premiered. I'm even a Woody Allen movie behind in talking about this now, so I'll just add my comments briefly, like an awkward, overzealous piece of applause that comes well after when everyone else has finished their obligatory bit. This movie had potential, but it needed some serious care and attention to be anything great or memorable. And I'd even call it a failure of a screenplay in that it comes off like the script you write immediately after your first script, in that it's not pure shit, but needs some work and can hardly be called wholly original. The movie gets a 5 out of 10. I kind of liked the one piece of music that they scored the entire film with. Victoria generated a bit of a buzz last year in that it's done entirely in one take, which should be commended. I mean, somebody has to do it every couple years just to prove that it can be done, and as I understand, this has a little more to it than that Russian Ark movie. However, once the novelty wears off, there's not much to this movie beyond a gimmick. It's impossible to be truly absorbed by this thing because it quickly becomes a constant game of, will they fuck up the shot or not? And in constantly asking ourselves this, it's impossible to have a truly immersive experience. Otherwise, we're constantly reminded this thing's all one take by shoddy camera work that hardly makes up for any of the benefits of a giant oneer. It'd be one thing if this movie maintained Birdman's level of coordination for 2 hours, but Birdman, this is not. So this film is a true single take. I guess so they can say that as a selling point, but in the interest of actually making an effective film, I have to ask, why wouldn't you hide a cut? Hide 2 cuts, hide 7 cuts, hide 18 cuts. With a little forethought, you can make it seamless, especially with today's technology. I swear the audience won't know the difference. It's a point of controversy, but I believe they've sacrificed the ability to make a more effective film for stupid reasons. And it's not just that. There are no sequences in this film that seriously jeopardize the shot, despite what you might have seen or heard about a piano scene. Altogether, it's not the most compelling story. Things get intense in a couple parts, and that intensity is upped by the fact that that scene is done in one take, but I couldn't tell you much of anything about any of the characters other than applying the blanket statement that they're all impulsive and idiots. The movie tries to substitute rising action and character development with long, boring scenes of bullshitting and pointless improvised dialogue. I don't think the movie succeeded on any level beyond being a technical achievement, which makes it a 4 out of 10 for me. And that's log 20. Thank you so much for watching this bit on the 2015 movies that made me just kind of go, eh. The binge goes on, but for now I'm afraid this is.